Welcome to ETL's Transformation Manager blog. Over the coming blogs, we're going to show you some of the features and functionality of Transformation Manager, building up an enhanced version of our original 10-minute demonstration. So let's start with our first blog, Getting Started. For all our blog series, we'll be using data from the airline industry, and it's quite a tight, contrived set of data that we've built up to show you some of the features and functionality. So as we can see, we're going to be using some flat files, and there'll be an airplane flat file, a turbine blade, a bolt flat file, and a standards flat file. And those are going to be migrated into an Oracle database, which will have a slightly different structure from the flat files coming in, so we'll have to do a little bit of work as we're migrating that data to adjust the structure and any other features along the way. So if we have a quick look at the flat files that we're dealing with, we can see here we have the aeroplane CSV file. We see we have a name, we have a plane code, an origin, max passengers, and whether it's active. Have a look at the turbine blades, a little bit more information. So we have the blade ID, name and description. We have a cost and a currency. We then have an engine ID and an engine name, followed by the attachment bolt and an airplane. If you have a look at the nuts and bolts, you can see there's only two nuts and bolts in there, so you can either have a bolt of 5, 6, 7, 8 or 1, 2, 3, 4. And finally, if we look at our standards for now, we can see that we just have GBP to GBP and USD to USD. Okay, now I've had a look at the files, let's have a look at TM. So when we look at TM for the first time, we can see here's a designer. In the top window here is where we'll have our projects. The middle window here is where we'll have our models that we load in. The bottom window is for our procedures, so as we're going along and we build up features and functionality we want to reuse in different projects, then we store those within our procedures. In the center pane is where we'll do all our work. We'll have our models, our sources, targets, and business logic. And down here at the bottom, you can see that we'll have things like the output, search results, etc. Okay, so to begin with, what we're going to do is create a new repository. And what this is going to do, it's a storage area that will hold all the information that we're going to build up for our blogs over the coming weeks. So we need to give it a directory name. So we could give it blog repository as the name. For the location, we'll go into the demos directory, and in here I'll create a new repository directory to hold it. I'll hit select, and finally we click OK. So what that's done now, it's created us a new repository that we can store all our projects in. You can see it does give us one model, which is the TM error model, and this is used to hold errors when we're doing the migration, so that we can also map those out at a later date to flat files, Excel, XML, and whatever else you want to output them to. So our first job is really to get some models in. So we can load the models here. You can see we can load database, flat file, generic, Java. There's model packs where we provide various model packs already for you, and XML as either XML, XSD, or DTD. So for this one, we'll choose a flat file. We'll give it a name of input files. We'll hit next. So the next job is to add the elements. Click add, browse for the file. Again, we'll go back to our demos, generic, blog, source data, and we'll start with our aeroplane file. So as we saw when you looked at it earlier, it's not fixed width, it was just delimited by a comma in this case. There's no field quotes. The first row did contain the field name, so our first line of data will be row 2. We'll hit next. We can infer the model to see what we get, and there we go, we can see that kind of fits what we expected to get. We can hit next. Again, for the validation rules at the moment, we'll leave those and we'll just hit next. And finally, we give it the element name. So airplane, hit finish. So that's our first file in to our input files model. So next we need to add our next file in, and you can see how this is going to go. So again, it's the comma separated file. We hit next, infer the model. That looks okay. Looks like the file we're looking at. Accept the defaults. Give it an element name. Add for the third file. So we'll just select the standards. Select the comma. First row the field names. Infer it. Hit next. Next. And standards. So now we're getting on with adding our structure together. Getting on, select the turbine blades, our final file, select comma, first row for the data, infer the model. Again, we can just check that fits with what we expected. Hit next, next, and give it an element name. And there we have it, our 4 elements into our model. Hit finish. That's going to load our model into TM. There we have it on the left hand side now as a model. Input files, so we have our standards file, have an aeroplane file, turbine blade file, and our nuts and bolts. So you can see all the metadata there for those 4 files is now held within our input files model. You'll also notice we have a few key items there from TM which we can use and we'll demonstrate at a later date. So next, let's load the database. So this is going to be our target that we're going to migrate the information to. So we give it a user and a password. We need to specify the URL. In this case, it's on a local VM that I'm using. The driver's okay. We hit next. Gives us the model name as it connects up. We'll accept the defaults for now. And again, we're loading in the database model. And here we can see now on the left hand side we have the Engine X model. There we have the origin table, an engine table, aeroplane table, bolts table, turbine costs, and a standards table. We also have the same key elements within the model there that TM put in automatically. As I said earlier, for the input file, we will look at some of those later through the blogs. So now we've got our 2 models in. We want to start a project. So hit right click on the project, hit new project, and we can call this, say, our blog project. For the source model, it's going to be the input files. Target will be the engine extended model. You can see here we could have loaded models as we went along at this point, so you can do it that way around if you want. And we'll click OK. You can see our blog project is now there available. We can see our source and target models. We can see we have no transforms at the moment or error handlers. Okay, so that's got us set up, and now we want to start actually moving some of the data. So right click on the transforms, new transform. Let's start at the top, move a bit of aeroplane information. So I've selected the aeroplane as our source file, and you can see here there the aeroplane source at the top in the active window at the top. You can see the whole of the input files models below. You can see now we're looking at the aeroplane to aeroplane in our center pane, and on the target side you can see we have the aeroplane database table there, and below it we have the entire database structure there that we've loaded in. As you can see on the source side, they're all hollow squares there, which means they're all optional. On the target side you can see we have some differences, so we have some optional columns there to populate. The solid block mean that they're mandatory. The little orange icon indicates that they're primary key. The green icon indicates that they're a foreign key. As we can see there, it's used in one relationship. And as we follow that down, you can actually see the relationships here. So you can see we have a relationship from aeroplane to engine and also one to origin. And by expanding that, we can actually see the engine table below it there, and we can see the origin table there. And again, as we go through, we'll start to see those expanding out, and we'll be following those relationships down. Okay, So let's begin with some basic mapping. Quite simply, we can drag and drop between them. So we can start to drag one item to the other. Max passengers, active. And there we go, we can see we've done some very basic mapping. It's one-to-one in this case, so nothing complex at all, but it gets us going. We're saying that we're moving the name, the plane code, max passengers, and active symbol from the source file to the target database. So at this point, we may want to see how we're doing, want to test it, see if we're going in the right direction. So one of the key things you can do with TM is we can actually right click here on the input files, we could connect, and we can actually have a look. Oops. So again, if I go and find the files that we're looking at, so the airplane nuts and bolts, standards, turbine blades, and what we can actually do then is view the data. So we can have a look within TM if we move that window around, so we can see everything that we're doing. Then we can have a look at the data within TM, and we can do the same on the target side. So if I connect up to that, and I can use an alias that I've defined earlier. To create one, you just enter the details, hit save alias. So it's simple to create one. And again, we could view the data for that. Evidently at the moment, there's no data in there because we haven't carried out the migration. But certainly we can see the source side data, and we can see our empty target ready to receive information. So once we're happy with that, we can right click on the project, hit build. We can also hit the little hammer symbol there if we want to build a project. You can see here we've got one warning. We're getting an identifying attribute. Plane code is assigned from an optional item, plane code on the source. So what that's warning us is that we're setting up that primary key there from what on the source file is only a optional item. So we'll accept that warning for now. We know that we've looked at the data, we know that that data is coming in correctly. We could evidently enhance our logic here and check that that data is valid and exists. But for now we'll accept it, and we'll look to run, and what we'll do for this is we'll launch the TM migrator, and we'll specify our sources and targets here. So again, we can specify our source files. Oops. There's our source files. For the target, we'll just hit the alias. And quite simply, once we've done that, we can hit run. That'll run the project. You can see we get some stats. Most of the time is system and connection time. So as there's not much data, most of it is actually, getting started and getting the thing moving. And what we can do now is we can swap back. We can refresh our target. And here we can see the data now has been populated into our database table. So if we have a quick look at the data, we can actually see here that we've got a Boeing 747 there, but we also have a Boeing 747 here, and that it's same name with different plane codes. So maybe that's not quite what we wanted. What we wanted was only to get one Boeing 747 into our target database. If we go back, check the input file, we can see that in the input file provided, we did actually get two Boeing 747s there, so it's just carried that through. And for the sake of our example, what we're going to do is actually reduce that down and get only unique named planes being migrated into our aeroplane target database table. So for more information on how we actually reduce that down, please tune in next time to see our next blog on identification manipulation. Thank you very much, and goodbye.